Your hosts, Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tighter Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tighter Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr from TighterInsider.com, I'm WVOA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. It's back. SEC Media Days returns this week. There was not a Media Day event in 2020 due to COVID-19. Day 2 of SEC Media Days at the Hyatt Regency Birmingham Winfrey Hotel saw head coaches and players from Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Ole Miss on the docket. Kirby Smart signing the helmets for the fans. They can't be inside, but they could be outside, and they were ready for Kirby. You know, he's done it all. Won 52 games in 5 years, won an SEC championship, played for a national championship. That's what he hasn't done. He hasn't won it all, and he hasn't beaten Alabama. So he actually hasn't won it all. Josh Heupel, first ever trip to SEC Media Days. Lane Kiffin, Mark Stoops there as well. The joint is jumping over in Hoover. All right, and we are ready to go, too, with Rodney Orr, as I said, on Tighter Insider TV. We have got it rolling, and it is time to take you now to Hoover and check in with Stu McCann. And Stu McCann is standing by live there at the Hyatt Regency Birmingham Winfrey Hotel and joins us now with the latest. Stu, take it away.
Hey, Gary and Rodney, you know, there's a little bit of a Southern California invasion angle going on. The top 3 quarterbacks in the SEC, arguably, depending on who you talk to, would be Georgia's J.T. Daniels, Ole Miss's Matt Corral, and Alabama's Bryce Young. They grew up within 100 miles of one another, about 3,000 miles west of here, Alabama. So this was earlier today at SEC Media Days. It's Daniels and his former USC teammate, Venus Jones Jr., catching up. Daniels attended Mater Dei High School in California before going on to Southern California, and then he came to Georgia last offseason. But when he left high school, he left Mater Dei, that's a California powerhouse. Well, now quarterback for Alabama, Bryce Young, took over and did just as well. So what you've got is Daniels, Bryce Young, Matt Corral, as well as the Clemson quarterback DJ Uiagalelei bonding by going through the football camp circuit like the Elite 11 and the Manning Passing Academy. Daniels and Corral burst onto the SEC scene last season, and they have no doubt that Young possesses the talent to be right there with them this year.
Just a really good couple of classes, I guess. But in terms of Bryce, he's a stud. He's a star player. When I had left Mater Dei and they got Bryce, like I had known Bryce since I was an 8th grader. He was a 7th grader. And I knew back then, like, he's a special player. So I was, honestly, like, when Mater Dei got him, I was really excited. I told Max Preps that he would be the best quarterback in the country by the time he was a junior in high school. Just because, you know, I'd seen him play and I think he's a really good player. I expect a lot of success for Bryce.
It must have been a pretty good day for JT Daniels and Matt Corral, because according to one online sportsbook, BetOnline AG, 4 of the favorites for the Heisman Trophy would be Daniels, would be Matt Corral, would be Bryce Young, and DJ Uiagalelei. Those 4 friends from California are now tearing up college football. So what does that mean as far as on the field this year? Well, you've got Uiagalelei and Clemson opening up against Georgia and Daniels. On October 2nd, it will be Young welcoming in Alabama, welcoming in Corral and Ole Miss, and possibly, depending on the outcome of that game, it could lead to a showdown with Georgia and Daniels in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. We'll have to see, but there's one thing to be sure. Those guys, it's part of a really cool club to be a part of. From SEC Media Days, Stu McCann, live for Tighter Insider TV.
Outstanding report, Stu. We really appreciate you, the work that you and Ariel Schaefer have been doing all week over there at SEC Media Days for us. And interesting on those quarterbacks.
Yeah, great story.
California can turn them out, can't they?
Absolutely. California, Texas, Gary, turn out great quarterbacks.
Yeah, a bunch of them right here in the SEC. Isn't that something? Well, Alabama's day to meet the media is tomorrow. It's Bama Day. Head coach Nick Saban going to be asked about all kinds of topics. You know that, COVID, NIL, the national championship from last year, the chance of winning a national championship this year. He might also be asked about wide receiver Xavier Williams. Rodney, this is an interesting deal here. He is not listed inside the media guide, the roster in the hard copy of the media guide. Charlie Potter from Bama Online was the first to point that out. However, his name is back on the roster, on the online roster, and he is not in the transfer portal. Last season, he finished with 3 catches for 24 yards, including a catch for 12 yards in the Tide's national championship win over Ohio State. Rodney, he's one of many talented wide receivers for Alabama looking for playing time this season, but I have to assume that he's going to be on the team this year.
Yeah, we'll find that out probably for sure tomorrow. Gary, he was a guy that was certainly going to compete for an opportunity, and he's been around a while. He's one of the older wide receivers, actually. Hasn't seen a lot of time here since he's been here, but certainly a guy that was expected to compete this season.
All right, maybe we'll find out more from Coach Saban tomorrow. Well, now it's time for Coach Talk. On Monday, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey stated that he wishes to remove the roster number requirements for teams that exhibit positive cases in terms of coronavirus. However, that would mean that teams would have to outright forfeit the game rather than have the game postponed. Here's Coach Talk with Greg Sankey.
We still have roster minimums that exist, just like last year. What I've identified for consideration among our membership is we remove those roster minimums, and you're expected to play as scheduled. That means your team needs to be healthy to compete. And if not, that game won't be rescheduled.
Well, Sankey says that 6 teams in the 14-member SEC have reached the 80% vaccination mark. That's a little less than 50%. Now, Rodney, listen, we know that COVID is still out there. We know that people are still getting it. People that have been vaccinated are getting it. This is a tricky topic, a subject that it has some gray area because, yes, you want players to get vaccinated. Most of the coaches do, the conference does, but you can't tell them to get vaccinated. That's still a personal decision that they have to make. Sometimes their families may not want them to get vaccinated. So you do the best you can. But, again, this is something that the individual student athlete has the right to decide whether or not they want to get vaccinated.
Yeah, what we have to do is just hope there's not a rash on a team where you have a lot of positives turn up one week, you lose a game, Gary, not rescheduling it, that can really mess up the season. As you know, we saw some of that last year, but this year, you were hoping that maybe we wouldn't have to deal with that, but let's just hope that we don't.
Yeah, let's hope that we don't. Let's hope we get all the games played, but we've seen from the Olympics, we've seen from Major League Baseball that, it's still around. And the protocols are tough for the general public, but they're especially tough for athletes. When an athlete gets it, whether it's professional or in college, there are strict protocols in place, and it can impact a team in a hurry. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama football picks up another 5-star commitment. We'll look back at the big commitment from Friday. And Bryce Young hasn't started a game at quarterback for the Crimson Tide, but the cash is already rolling in, all legal and such. We'll have details coming up. And later on, we'll be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. The phone number is always 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen or tweet at us using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. We're back after this. We're back here on Tider Insider Television, sponsored by Tuscaloosa Tourism Sports. Don Staley and crew do so much for Tuscaloosa and West Alabama, and we're proud to have them with us right here on TITV. Alongside Rodney Moore, I'm Gary Harris. This past week on Friday, Alabama football received a huge commitment, both literally and figuratively. 5-star offensive tackle Tyler Booker from the IMG Academy in Florida. Booker stands 6'5", weighs about 330. According to ESPN, he's the top-ranked offensive tackle and number 7-ranked prospect overall in the 2022 class. Booker, who's originally from Connecticut, picked Alabama over SEC rival Georgia. He took official visits to both schools in June. He also visited Ohio State, Oregon, and Florida. Booker's commitment continues an offensive tackle pipeline from IMG in 2019. Alabama signed Evan Neal, the number 4-ranked prospect overall, who's projected as a first-round NFL draft pick in 2022. In the 2021 cycle, the Crimson Tide signed J.C. Latham, the number 5 overall prospect. He might start as a true freshman. So, Rodney, quick word on this young man, what he brings. Look at that guy.
Yeah.
They hand him the football.
Yeah, Gary, I think when you look at him, he could well end up the number 1 offensive tackle, number 1 offensive lineman, I think, in this class. Certainly one of the top 3 or 4 as it stands right now. You talk about J.C. Latham. kind of a mirror image. Last year, I remember watching IMG in the first game. I was trying to figure out which one's Latham and which one's Booker. You know, I mean, you couldn't hardly tell them apart. But, I mean, this is tremendous offensive line recruiting. After signing that great class of linemen last year, coming back, starting this class with Booker, just a tremendous start.
Yeah, unbelievable indeed. Well, Alabama sophomore quarterback Bryce Young has yet to start a game for the Crimson Tide, but according to Nick Saban, he's already raking in nearly 7 figures in name, image, and likeness money. Speaking today at the Texas High School Coaches Association's annual convention, Saban said that Young's NIL income is closing in on $1 million. Saban, of course, not passing on the opportunity to say that Young is taking advantage of Alabama's brand, which he is. He played in 7 games in 2020 as Mac Jones' backup, attempted just 22 passes on the season. Now, Rodney, we know he's talented. We know he's articulate. We've heard enough of him from that. He's a good-looking young man. I can see why companies want to line up with Bryce Young and endorse him. But Saban makes a good point. He's never started a game. So some of that speaks to Bryce Young and his marketability. Some of it speaks to being the quarterback at the University of Alabama.
If you remember a year ago, we talked about the NIL, the potential of it. And I told you about a teleconference or the Zoom call that was held with numerous administrators across the country, marketing people, and the guy hosting the Zoom call from the University of Colorado used the Alabama quarterback as an example in saying that that will be the most marketable player in the country. And now you see Bryce Young with this information from Coach Saban, already $1 million. He's never started a game. It's pretty phenomenal. But you're right, Gary. I mean, it's the brand. And listen, Nick Saban, I think, did this perfectly. You go out to Texas, which has been a fertile recruiting ground for you. Last year, you cleaned up in the state. It's becoming more competitive out there. Jimbo, obviously, Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. Sark now out there at the University of Texas. And then he makes this comment right on that fertile recruiting ground, right to the Texas high school coaches. I mean, I don't think you could have done it any better.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be anything that they can come up with, whether it's rule changes or anything that Nick Saban doesn't find a way to maximize Alabama's potential. That's why he's the best in the business. Still to come, another former Alabama men's golfer trying to make a name for himself in professional golf. We'll have the story. And we'll be taking your phone calls, emails, and tweets. There's the information on the screen. Hey, listen, it's SEC Media Days week. Alabama's up tomorrow. It's football season right around the corner. We want to hear from you, Tider Insider Nation. Give us a call at 205-348-9882. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the award-winning Tider Insider TV. Former Alabama men's golfer Tom Lovelady shot a 62 on Monday in a qualifier and earned a spot in the field for the PGA's 3M Open that starts on Thursday in the Twin Cities up there in Minnesota. It's the second PGA tournament he's qualified for this season. Lovelady played in the Byron Nelson Classic in May. He's the 3rd former Crimson Tide golfer in the 3M field, joining Robbie Shelton and Michael Thompson. Thompson won the event last year, by the way. Roll Tide. All right, welcome back into Tider Insider TV. It's time to head out on the phone lines. Along with RODNEY, I'm Gary Harris. We're brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. And let's go out on the phone lines and talk with Matt right here in Tuscaloosa. Hey, Matt, how are you? Matt, you with us? All right, Matt seems to be gone, but he wanted to know about Malachi Moore starting at the cornerback position. Certainly, Malachi Moore is a true freshman, was an outstanding football player for Alabama. He's going to be in that secondary mix. You think he'll be a starter?
Yeah, I do, at the star position, Gary.
Right.
Yeah, I really do. I think, obviously, that's what he was last year. I think he did an incredible job as a true freshman. A very talented player. So I think he'll be in that nickel package at the star. I think at the corners he may want to know. Josh Jobe, obviously, returning for his 3rd year as a starter. Other guys,
All-American candidate.
Absolutely. Other guys competing. Jalen Armour-Davis on the other side. I think he had a great spring. Kool-Aid McKinstry got a great opportunity. Marcus Banks is another good young corner they've got out of Texas. So, and others as well. But, you know, I'd keep an eye certainly on Jalen Armour-Davis, Josh Jobe.
All right, thanks for that phone call, Matt. We don't know what happened to you on the air, but we got your question answered for you. All right, let's get to an email. This is from Lee in Birmingham. Do you think NIL deals will affect the players' focus? Lee, it's a good question. I mean, it is. It's a fair question. A lot of that's going to depend on the individual. I think a lot of that will depend on the program culture. So I would say this. We just talked about Bryce Young already close to $1 million in NIL money coming in Of course, he's got CAA, a big marketing company representing him. I think, again, just like everything else at Alabama, there's a reason this is the best program in the country. I think the culture here will impact the players in regards to how they handle this. And I think that Alabama will deal with it better than most.
Yeah, and it starts with Nick Saban.
Yeah.
That's how they'll manage it, just like they did the pandemic last year. Probably handled it better than anyone in the country. They'll handle this better than anyone in the country. And we've said this over and over, talking about what may the topics tomorrow, talking about the NIL, Gary. You know, Nick Saban's telling his team, look, you come here and you do what you were recruited to do, which was to come here, develop as a player, become the best player you possibly can. All these other opportunities will take care of themselves. You've got the Alabama brand here, so you're going to have every opportunity to be very successful.
All right, phone lines are open right now. Give us a call at 205-348-WVUA. We'd love to get you in. It's rare during SEC Media Days week that we have phone lines available, but they're available. All right, in the meantime, we're going to get to another email. Charlita in Tuscaloosa. Will Brian Robinson play in the NFL? The Alabama running back who is playing his final year of eligibility from Hillcrest High School. I think probably what he's focused on is to have a great year for Alabama, to get that opportunity. But yes, I think he'll have a good chance to play in the National Football League like most Alabama starting running backs do, or in some cases, even their backups.
Yes, you're right. You know, you look at Brian Robinson, and you talk about his size. He's 6'1", he's 225 pounds plus. When he tests, he's going to run really, really well. He's got excellent speed, Gary, straight line speed, probably a sub 4.5. We saw him in the Ohio State game. I thought he ran as well in that game as I had seen him running with authority. If he can run with that kind of confidence that he ran in that Ohio State game, Gary, I think he'll have a really good year.
Well, still to come, Deonte Wilder from Tuscaloosa is a big Alabama sports fan, and he's got a big fight that is back on. Coming up against Tyson Fury, we'll have details. And more of your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the information on the screen. Give us a ring. We're wide open right now. Come on, man. Come on, women, not just men. Men and ladies, give us a call. 205-348-9882 is the number. You can also shoot us an email at that address on your screen. We'll be right back with more TITV after this. A new date for the Trilogy fight between Tyson Fury, the WBC champion and former champion, Tuscaloosa's very own Deonte the Bronze Bomber Wilder, big Alabama sports fan. It's now on for October the 9th in Las Vegas after it was originally scheduled for July 24th, but postponed after Fury's camp had a COVID outbreak, and he got it himself, so they're having to delay it. But coming up October 9th, hopefully the Bronze Bomber will get back on top. And welcome back into TITV. Along with Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. This show brought to you, as always, by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. All right, let's go back on the phone lines. Francis is with us over in Bessemer. Hey, Francis.
Hi.
Hello, you're on the air.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
My question is, who's going to be the center of this?
Okay, Francis.
Going to be the center?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's several candidates. My feeling is, and Rodney knows more about it than I do, he keeps his pulse on what's going on with UA all the time. I think it's probably going to wind up being Chris Owens. He's got the experience. He came back for that extra COVID year, played really well last year after Landon Dickerson went down. That would be my guess, but he'll have competition.
I'm with you. I think obviously the job that he did last year, and he started the year before, if you remember, I think he started 3 of the first 4 games in the previous season before Landon Dickerson permanently took over that spot. But, he's got experience. He's a leader. So, and he did a tremendous job. You look at the Notre Dame and the Ohio State games, Gary, when he had to fill in the playoffs. That was really, he minimized that loss of Landon Dickerson. I thought Chris Owens did a fantastic job. So, yeah, I think Chris Owens, but you got some really good young players. Obviously, Darian Dalcourt's one. Javian Cohen's a guy that can play every position probably on the offensive line. Will he get some reps at center? Don't really know, but he could play a lot of spots. You got some young players. Seth McLaughlin's another one that's a promising young player. James Brockemeyer is another promising young player. There are probably others, but they're going to have a lot to choose from for sure, but I think Chris Owens.
All right, thanks for the phone call in Bessemer there from Francis. All right, Tyler called in and left a question. Didn't want to go on the air for Tuscaloosa. How will the wide receiver depth chart stack up? We kind of alluded to this earlier when we talked about Xavier Williams. I mean, obviously, Mechie is going to be your go-to guy. Slade Bolden's got experience, but they got a lot, like at every position. They got a lot of numbers in terms of the wide receiver core, a lot of young guys, some true freshmen that could impact this team this season.
Yeah, you know, Gary, when you look at this, you look at all the young players that they have, you know, replacing star players. Obviously, we've talked about Bryce Young, but you have all these receivers. Yeah, obviously Mechie and Slade Bolden have experience, but you've got some young players that are really exciting. We saw a Jai Hall in the 8A game, potentially a future star. Javon Baker's a player that you've just kind of been waiting for him to emerge. Trayshawn Holden looked really good, I thought, at times in the 8A game. You've got some true freshmen coming in, JaCory Brooks. We mentioned a Jai Hall, but JoJo Earl in the slot. I think he's a guy that could be a really fantastic player eventually. And Christian Leary, tremendous speed, kid from Florida, highly recruited, be a true freshman. We've talked about a lot of young players, but what about Jamison Williams, the transfer? Yeah. He may be a guy that makes an immediate impact, 10, 400-meter speed. So, you know, that's kind of a rundown. There's others, but they certainly, as Gary said, have a lot to choose from.
A lot of guys for Bryce Young to get the ball to. He may not have to throw it very far either to get big gains. A lot of these guys are going to be able to catch it, and we're used to that around here, and then run with it for a long way. All right, thanks for all the phone calls and emails still to come. A former Bama basketball star, Richard Hendricks, giving back to his hometown of Athens. We'll be back with more TITV. Yeah, it's been overcast. It's been raining for a while, but you know what? It's still pretty in the City of Champions. Back with more TITV right after this. It's the same stuff. Could you forward into, it's like a minute 50. Could you forward into it maybe about 40 seconds and take it from there? That way we'll see new stuff. Yeah. Well, former Alabama basketball star Richard Hendricks hosted his 8th annual basketball camp this past week, and he did it in his hometown of Athens. Man, he is a really great guy. I got to know Richard well when he was playing at UA. He's been playing overseas now, Rodney, for like 15 years, 14, 15 years, teaching the fundamentals to these young campers and, you know, getting to hang out with those kids, too. It means a lot when a professional basketball player spends time with young people. That's the kind of guy Richard Hendricks is. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Tider Insider TV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Don't forget, if you missed any of the program, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 following the news at 10, or catch it online anytime at WVUA23.com. We're going to leave you now with more scenes from today's SEC Media Day event in Hoover. For Rodney Moore, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good night.